এখন ঠিক আছে?
54-57. Again, he's overperforming them. And finally, in Winnebago, 36%. I want to show two more counties you guys may have heard of, may not have. We're seeing these are suburbs of Milwaukee, getting closer to Chicago. These were counties that Trump flipped from Obama, and then he held them 4 years later. 15% in, Trump was at 51-68. That's a strong number for him. We go to Kenosha, which has been in the headlines, especially after the George Floyd protests. 50% in 2020, 73% in. He's overperforming there. So if you're looking at Wisconsin right now, I mean, the Republicans have some sort of positivity here that they're looking at. Sauk County is one of these counties that we watch that usually picks the winner of Wisconsin. Sauk is one, and Dorr is the other one. You've probably heard of Dorr if you've been following the political headlines lately. Our data out of Dorr is a little skewed right now, so we're going to wait till the numbers get corrected there for right now. But Sauk County we can look at, 48% is in. Biden won this in 2020. Trump won it in 2016, 47-50. You can see Trump's overperforming there. But again, still a lot of the vote is out. We're going to have to wait and see and what happens. And in case you were wondering, Sauk County, home of the International Clown Hall of Fame. So if you ever want to go down there and you're near Madison, drive over to Sauk.
We're getting to the witching hour. We got the fact alert. Wow, fun fact alert from Tom. Welcome to the fun facts. Yes, exactly. Let's go to Stephanie. Gosh, she's in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. A lot of hopes riding on Pennsylvania for the Harris campaign. What do you know?
Yeah, there certainly are, Savannah. You know, we are here in Philadelphia at the tabulation center. This is where they're going through all those mail-in ballots. And, you know, we've been noticing in recent weeks and months kind of a lessons learned category from 4 years ago. And this place is a perfect example of some of those lessons that have been learned. You may remember in 2020, the tabulation of the mail-in ballots in Philadelphia took place in downtown Philadelphia. And it was basically chaos. Now they're in this entirely new building. It is secured by a fence with barbed wire, and they are doing tabulation inside here. We're actually not allowed inside, but it's going on as we speak right now. And one of the unknowns back in 2020 at the end of the night was, well, just how many mail-in ballots are there out there? We don't know. Well, tonight, right before midnight, we're going to get a briefing here from the city commissioner, from Seth Bluestein. He's going to tell us how many of those mail-in ballots from Philadelphia have been processed and how many they have yet to process, to give an idea of how much more time it is going to take. All of that, more transparency, this more security, so things go much more smoothly. Savannah?
All right, thank you, Stephanie.
Back with our panel and guests, former Missouri Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill and Mark Lauder, former Director of Strategic Communications of the Trump 2020 campaign. Good to have you both back. How's the blue wall looking right now, Senator?
Well, you know what, I just got to say, with the exception of Brave and Seltzer and her poll in Iowa, where clearly she did not get it right, it looks like the pollsters got it right in this election, because I'm looking at these blue walls. If you look at Berks County, Harris is underperforming. You look at Lancaster County, she's overperforming. It's going to be razor close. I don't think there's any question. Now, what we're going to have to figure out is, do we have a country where an election can be close and people can accept the results? That's the question that I'm beginning to worry about, that if these are all really close and they go the way of Donald Trump, I don't think there'll be any problem.
Well, Mark, we live in a 50-50 world. I mean, we do. I mean,
we really do.
It's not going to stop after, Wednesday or beyond.
No, and one of the things I'll tell you I'm looking at right now is Philadelphia itself. Because while Kamala Harris has her margin, the numbers aren't there. She's about 2 points behind right now of where Joe Biden was, but there was a 471,000 vote difference to offset the rural areas. Right now, with 50% of the voting, the last time I looked, she's on pace for maybe 390,000, maybe 400 or so thousand. That if the current margins hold, and that's a projection, she could be above 450. Yeah. And if we're down there in that right, because right now it's about 190,000 vote difference with 50% in.
It's early, but I mean, it seems like what we're gleaning from exit polls and other data is that the Trump campaign is overperforming, doing very well with Hispanic voters and young men. That Joe Rogan army appears to be real in a lot of these places. Is that what you're seeing, Mark?
No, absolutely. I think they're very excited by that, and they also see that they're overperforming in rural areas. I think they're trying to cut their losses in the urban areas and in some of the suburbs. It's not always working, but I think in some of these key battleground states, it's panning out right now.
Claire, what are you hearing from the Democratic side?
Well, first of all, I think that there's a lot of people on the Democratic side that are paying a lot of attention to what's happening with Sherrod Brown and John Tester right now.
How about that? Yeah.
Because the fact that it's been called for Trump in Montana and it hasn't been called for the Senate race gives you an indication. Same thing in Ohio. And I think everybody needs to remember what Lester just said is true. It's a 50-50 country. Let's assume for purposes of this conversation that in fact they take the Senate. And let's assume for purposes that Trump wins the presidency. They're not going to have more than 51 votes in the Senate, maybe 52. And you have a couple of Republicans that are not all on board with some of the Trump stuff, like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. You could actually have a situation where the Senate is frozen in either administration, depending on how it goes. So now's a time that I think that regardless of how this turns out, I think the leader of this country needs to realize it's time to quit dividing and try to unite and figure out if we can't find ways to work together.
We have a divided Senate, and already the status quo is, essentially tied with Democrats having control of the tie-breaking vote of Vice President Harris. We haven't even talked about the House, possibly because it will be weeks before we know, but Democrats are hoping to take back control of the House. They only need to net out 4 seats, so those races will go. But once again, you just look at a country, to Lester's point, that is very divided, and this is what the pollsters were showing, and right now, so far, that is what the results are bearing out.
And I will say, we're sitting here, it's 10:30 Eastern time. This is kind of a little bit of a strange moment. We have some data in, but not all. We have a lot of exit poll data in, but not a ton of vote count yet. We still have a ways to go. We haven't called a single key battleground state yet. So this is an interesting moment in the evening, and I think it bears having this conversation, because when you look at the strategies from each of these campaigns, the vice president did something very specific. She looked to once she got into the race not too long ago, she looked to cast Donald Trump as a danger to democracy, but she also looked to make the positive case for herself and why she should get another 4 years. Her campaign spent so much time in places like Wisconsin. Think about that Ripon visit, the birthplace of the Republican Party, bringing out Liz Cheney, former congresswoman on the Republican side. I think everybody knows who the Cheney family is, trying to reach out to this tiny slice of people who aren't quite totally in their tribal quarters. Former President Trump looked to supercharge his base.
So it's so interesting because you say it's a tiny number, and it is, but these were Haley voters, a lot of them. Kamala Harris went around with Liz Cheney. They went to the counties, and in Arizona we saw Jimmy McCain and some of these big names and former Republicans, Jeff Flake, who are out there. She was trying to find those moms, the suburban women who just had enough with Donald Trump.
Let me just pause the conversation very quickly because we have a call now, I believe, in Nebraska. Okay, this is NBC News projects that 3 of the 5 electoral votes will go to Donald Trump. 3 of 5, you ask? That takes me to Tom. How would you explain it?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Again, so Nebraska, remember, they give out their electoral votes for the popular vote. Whoever wins the state, they also give them by congressional district. From what you just reported there, projecting one of the congressional districts, it's going to be District 3. It's going to go to Trump. There are 2 other congressional districts, 1 and 2, that we're still watching. Nebraska District 2, this is the big one that we've been watching. It's the swing district. The other one, Nebraska 1, usually goes red. We're still waiting on some vote there. It hasn't been called yet. But again, Nebraska 2 is the big one because if it came down to that 269 scenario, we would come here to Omaha. Nebraska District 2 is Omaha, which is Douglas County. It's also a neighboring conservative county, Saunders, and a little bit of Sarpy as well. I think we just can't call it. The difference is 22,000 votes. That's what the difference was in 2020 when Biden won the state. So Democrats are in good shape right now. It's unclear how much of the vote is out. Let me see if I can come back and see if we can get how much of the remaining vote is out in this state. We can't check it just yet. As soon as we have a call on Nebraska 2, we'll bring it to you. It's 1 electoral vote, but in a razor-tight election, each electoral vote is important, guys.
All right, let's take a look at the battlegrounds. It's 10:35 in the east, 7:35 in the west, and we've got all battlegrounds closed right now and votes being counted, and too close to call is something you're going to hear me say a lot over these next few moments. That's the story in Pennsylvania, about 58% of the vote in there. In Michigan, also too close to call, a battleground state where both candidates spent a ton of time, alongside Wisconsin as well, too close to call at this hour, still counting about half the vote in there. Let's go down south, the Sun Belt path. Georgia, too close to call. Biden won it by a hair in 2020. Donald Trump trying to get it back tonight, too close to call. In North Carolina, we're still calling it too early to call, so we're waiting for more vote there, even though 84% of the vote is in. In Arizona, too early to call, too. We just had the polls closed there about 90 minutes ago. They got to wait a little bit before they can even start counting votes there. And same thing in Nevada. It'll be a while there. And in fact, if you mail your vote in Nevada, I think you can mail it. It could be land there as late as Friday, actually, and still be counted. Those are the rules in that state. So here's the road to 270, and it's being filled out along the familiar lines that we've all become so familiar with over these last couple of presidential cycles, with those big question marks. Tom, let's go to Pennsylvania, because I think this is, we've often said this will be the ball game, and we're starting to get more vote, and maybe we could look at some of those bellwethers, like in Erie County, for example, or Lackawanna County. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we're also seeing some outliers as well. So, man, I want to show you what I'm talking about. Center County, it's in the center of the state. This is red right now. 68% of the vote is in. Biden won this in 2020. Hillary Clinton won this in 2016. Why am I highlighting this county? Let me move the map over again. Center County, this is Penn State. This is Happy Valley. This is a university county. The Democrats should be on top right now. Again, there's 68% of the vote in. They can still catch up, but Trump is on top right now. I want to go back to Eastern PA again, which has changed because a lot of people from New York and New Jersey have moved to the eastern portion of the state. We're talking about Northampton. This is one of those bellwethers, Savannah, you were talking about. It almost always picks the winner going back to like the Kennedy years, I think. Trump won it in 2016, Biden won it in 2020. Right now, Trump's on top. 73% of the vote is in, so there's still vote out. Those things could change. Again, it's still early. We're not calling these counties as well. I want to zoom in here. This is Berks County. I'm going to zoom in. Reading, PA. This is a city where Hispanics are the majority here. 92% of the vote is in. Trump is up at 56. It's not a huge surprise, but what it shows is that he's overperforming. He won this county in 2016 and 2020, and tonight he's overperforming. Again, some of that vote is still out, and we're watching that. Finally, I want to look at Scranton right here. Okay, Lackawanna County. Republicans thought they maybe had a chance in Scranton at least to peel away some of the votes there. Again, this is where Joe Biden was from. People wondered if he got the friends and family discount there with voters. She's underperforming tonight, 51% right now. Biden was at 53. In a state where it could be determined by 40,000 votes, 80,000 votes, every little bit matters. If they're looking at the map right now and you're a Republican, you're probably feeling a little bit better. But again, I just want to say it's still so early in the night, and there's still a lot of vote out. Philadelphia County, just because this was brought up on the set earlier, 62% of the vote is in. Biden was at 81. She's at 77. A lot of the vote is still out. But again, she wants to be in the same high watermarks for Biden is, guys.
Yeah, Mark Lauder was just here, you staffed Vice President Pence, and you're obviously a longtime Republican operative. You think there's not enough vote for her to make up that margin?
Well, there's still a lot out there. I was saying, all of these things start to add up. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. And so if you drop 40,000 votes in this state, maybe 6,000, or counting this 6,000 in another, next thing you know, you run out of options. I'll leave it to the brilliant minds of the decision desk to figure it out. But when that happens, I'm not nearly that good at math, but it's starting to look a little more encouraging. And when you see the Latino vote come in, you see some of the closing of the gap with the young voters. It's starting to add up.
Well, let me just jump in on that, because there are several places, as we're starting to now at this point in the night get some trends across battlegrounds when it comes to exit polling, with all the necessary caveats that you have heard by now. And there's a few places where former President Trump is making improvements from his performance 4 years ago. It is Latino voters, as you talked about, Mark. It is voters under 30, as you talked about. It is independents. It doesn't mean he's winning them, but he's doing better than he was 4 years ago. Here's where her improvement is, and this is interesting. It's with seniors. It's with voters over the age of 65, and we're starting to see that trend for her.
You pointed to me when you said
No, I'm not forgetting.
and I just want to let everyone know that
I took photos. We talked about it in the commercial break like 2 hours ago. It was more of a callback to something that I forgot we didn't say on the air because we're chit-chatting constantly. But the seniors piece of it is interesting because think about who actually gets out and votes, right? Who is more likely to get out there and vote? It is seniors. So there's some fascinating dynamics at play, and as we're all talking about, 10:40, we're only on our first cup of coffee.
I think one of the dynamics at play as we watch these results come in that's so fascinating. You think about how close, what a tough slog Pennsylvania is as we watch this come in, and you think about that decision that she made to have Walz as her running mate, as opposed to Governor Josh Shapiro. So as we watch this come in, and even on the day that she made that announcement, a lot of people questioned, what would Pennsylvania look like with Shapiro on the ticket? And
Well, I mean, if she loses Pennsylvania, you can guarantee that story is already being written. And Senator McCaskill, Josh Shapiro has, even in pretty red counties, is a very popular governor.
He is, but so is Tim Walz in the Midwest. And I think what her decision was, one of judgment, where she looked at somebody who had a resume just like hers, and she looked at someone who was much different. He went in the Ivy League. He wasn't all smooth. He was relatable and a coach and somebody who really kind of oozed Midwestern relatability. And I think that's, she thought, was an add plus as opposed to just a mirror of who she was. And, I don't know if it was the right call or not. I think they're both terrific people. Either way, they're going to be around. Shapiro's not going anywhere. You may see him on a ballot in the future.
I'm just going to call it out. You sound like you see the end here.
I don't. I do think that, obviously we're disappointed about North Carolina and Georgia because there was a real feeling that there was such a good ground game compared to what the Trump...
And to be clear, we haven't called those.
No, we haven't, but I'm looking internally at the numbers, and they're not as hopeful as I would like them to be. I still think we have a path, obviously, the blue wall states, and I don't think anybody knows how Nevada's going to turn out, and I think that is another one. We could have 4 states that determine the presidency that are all decided by less than a half a point.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that.
That's so
How's that?
Let's go to NBC News correspondent Allison Barber now in Gwinnett County, Georgia. Allison, how are things going now?
Hey, Lester, so we're starting to get initial numbers from the early voting in this county. Initially, they were a little delayed in uploading some of those to the public because they said they were having difficulties with their software of getting a clear image. They were going line by line with a Republican watcher, a Democrat watcher, and other election officials getting those votes up. But now they have those reported, and based on the percent of early votes that are out, Harris is leading in the early votes that they have tabulated in this county so far, but still they haven't counted any of the precincts that reported today. That process is still happening here. So you see these people coming in, they're all people who have come from the different precincts in this county. There are 156 precincts in Gwinnett County. What they're dropping off right now, you see these purple bags here. Those are provisional ballots, in addition to a lot of blue bags. And the blue bags, I'm told, have official election material that had to be returned. Pamphlets, things that sort of gave directions to the election workers, all of that stuff coming in now. It's coming in waves. The first wave of stuff that was brought in from precinct captains on were the memory cards with the vote. That's something that election workers tell me is a way, a thing that's changed over the years. They said they used to get everything, the election materials that had to be returned, provisional ballots, and the memory cards with the votes all at once. And because it took a while to clean up, it would take a little longer for those memory cards to come in. Now they get the memory cards first, then the rest of the materials. The memory cards, they're actually in all these little bags. You see them unzipping there. Those are from 156 different precincts. Each precinct has at least 2 memory cards that have the vote count from today on them. They go in here, they get processed, and they go out to the public. So they're still deep in that process right now. But let's go again to the back, because this is where we see a lot of activity happening on and off, whether it's the early votes being processed and scanned and tabulated, or mail-in ballots being opened and sorted, or provisional ballots being reviewed. So remember, the thing that we're watching in this county was what would the margins be like, because it leans Democrat. We expected Democrats to carry this county, but ultimately, back in 2020, Donald Trump got 40% of the vote in Gwinnett County. And what Republicans were hoping was if they could notch that up by a couple percentage points, they could cut in to Harris's margins, and then if they also did well in Republican strongholds, could potentially carry the state. What we're seeing in turnout is turnout so far has exceeded the turnout numbers in 2020, and right now, based on what has been entered Trump is holding at about 40%. So right now, those extra percentage points haven't come. Could that change? Yes, that's Tom Giannis and Blaine will leave him on that. Over here, though, is where they're going through some of the different election material. They've also been sorting provisional ballots. You can see them in the back here, Savannah and Lester. They're just busy working. They will be here late at night. They expected the last bit of stuff to come from the precinct to get here at 11:30. Savannah.
All right, Allison, thank you so much. We're going to take a short break right here. Many more poll closings coming up at the top of this hour, including California and its whopping 54 electoral votes. And a look at who's ahead in the race to 270 on election night.
Kristen Welker hosts Meet the Press every Sunday on NBC.
Do you pledge not to hold a vote on any legislation that would ban abortion? Do you still have faith and confidence in the Supreme Court? Is this plan to ban price gouging anything more than a gimmick? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.